Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. First off, as I'm sure you've heard this morning, Mike Nichols passed away last night suddenly from a heart attack. It's a great loss to the Hollywood community as well as just entertainment in general. He was quite prolific in many different areas, television, also the theater. A really talented individual, came up through the improv scene, and I think that a lot of people today aren't as familiar with his work because he faded a little bit away from the public spotlight, I think both by his own choice and also from a lack of really successful projects, unlike what he had in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where he was quite successful. And he, of course, married Diane Sawyer, and they were one of the more intellectual power couples in Hollywood. But I think do yourself a favor. If you're not familiar with his work, you definitely should be. And even if you are, these are movies that never hurt to be rewatched. So I would recommend when you get a chance over the next few days, check out The Graduate, his breakout movie. Also, Postcards from the Edge is very good. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, a fantastic Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor film, classic for them as well. Working Girl, and of course The Birdcage, which I just recently rewatched with the very tragic passing of Robin Williams. So our thoughts are with the Mike Nichols family, and of course, while he is gone, his work never will be, and he'll always be remembered for what he contributed to, and not just entertainment, but I think society. He was a very again, intellectual director and very concerned with, I think, what he put out there, which is admirable, especially considering a lot of the conversations we have today about other talent. All right, so let's move on to today's morning movie news. We have three stories, a little bit of a light news day, but I think I found three that are at the very least interesting and therefore worth our time. One's a real doozy, actually. It's more on the business side, and so I know those don't tend to be as hot in terms of, search traffic, etc., but I know that I really enjoy them, and some of you do as well. So we'll do that second, though, but first, we got to put the comic book news first. You got to, if it bleeds ink, it bleeds. So let's talk about some Netflix casting over for the Marvel properties for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. Daredevil's already filming. They made an appearance at New York Comic Con. Well, I don't believe that the cast did, but the talent behind the camera did. That debut is fast approaching. But of course, they have to put a whole team together here, the Defenders. No talk yet about who will play Iron Fist, but apparently they're going to go next with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. I think Jessica Jones is next, but Luke Cage is obviously going to be in her show as well, so they have to cast that role. Interesting choices that you're going to see here, but I think the biggest takeaway is that clearly these are not actors that are viable on the big screen. So I think that in this casting alone, we really get our answers to whether or not we're going to see a crossover with the big screen Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're all supposed to cohabitate in the same area, just like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I think maybe some lesser characters will come down, just like they have on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I wouldn't expect too much of a crossover here, unless these shows just become incredibly popular and these actors prove that they were underestimated. But right now, I'm not seeing any potential for a movie crossover. With Charlie Cox, I thought there might be as Daredevil, but if I were Charlie Cox, if I were Charlie Cox's agent, I'd be really worried with these discussions about who else is going to fill out the cast. I'd be like, just when I thought I was barely escaping television, or at least had one foot out the door, they pull me back in. All right, so who's being considered? Well, let's start with Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones, now I'm going to describe these people to you because I think most likely you are not very familiar with who's up for the roles. But there's Kristen Ritter. She played Jane on Breaking Bad. She was also Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23, as you might recall that recent sitcom, which was short-lived. She's a very good actress. She's very funny. Interesting choice for Jessica Jones, though. Jessica Jones, just to give you some backstory on this character, she is she's very much a private detective type character. Brian Michael Bendis did a great job reinventing her, which is why she's even a part of this group in the first place, because it's all thanks to what he did with the character. I mean, she started out as a superhero, but he made her a private detective, retired from superheroics after a very tragic run-in, a traumatizing run-in with the Purple Man. I'm very curious to see if the show will go there, because it's not only it's like a real Hannibal Lecter type kind of run-in with some very strong sexual aspects to it. So I don't know if the Netflix show will want to go there. Maybe it'll feel it has to go there. But also she has a very interesting and complicated sexual encounter with Luke Cage, which to this day is still infamous. Well, not infamous. I mean, it was noteworthy, I guess you could say. It's surprising. It wasn't a mature, the comic was rated mature, but of course nobody cards anyone buying comics these days. So there was some discussion as to whether or not that should be in a comic. But it's very pivotal to both their relation, not only their relationship, but the development of them as individuals, especially Jessica Jones. So I can't imagine that not being in the show. And with that in mind, some of these actresses, particularly Alexandra Daddario, the other choice, the second choice she's in Percy Jackson, the daughter of Athena. She just seems too young to play that type of a role, especially considering the actors that are being considered for Luke Cage, which I think seem much older. So I don't see why they can't go older. But also Kristen Ritter, while quite funny, I don't think Jessica Jones is known for being funny. You need an actress who can really deliver these powerful emotional scenes. But so again, Private Detective, really a lot of self-hate, especially in her own individual series, which again was the start of the renaissance of this character. So I don't know if Kristen Ritter could pull that off, and I think Alexandra Daddario is too young to pull it off. Then there's also Teresa Palmer from Warm Bodies. I think she did a good job in Warm Bodies, but again, a little bit of a lightweight, I feel, in the acting department, so I'm not quite sure if she can pull off the role. I'm also not sure if any of these actresses can anchor a show. I mean, is anyone going to tune in to watch these actresses specifically? I'm surprised with these choices. And then the fourth one, Arrow fans will be happy. It's Jessica DeGao, who plays Huntress on that show. So she seems to me the best choice, and that's probably because I know the least about her. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, and when in doubt, go with the one you don't know, I guess, in this situation. So that's who they're considering for Jessica Jones. And then for Luke Cage, they have Lance Gross, best known for, he was on House of Pain, the Tyler Perry sitcom, but then also Crisis on NBC, which I guess Netflix knows is short-lived, or maybe it's already been canceled. Nobody even follows Crisis. So, I mean, at least he has a network show under his belt that he can point to, and maybe that's why he's being considered. Well, I mean, look, it got him in consideration for the Luke Cage deal, right? So Crisis can't be all that bad. Then Mike Coulter from The Good Wife, he's also in consideration. So not name talent, and I think there's talent out there that needs work. I guess I could really sit down and try and put together a competing list, but they're already off to the races here. But I'm sure that the Marvel casting department could come up with people who are trying to get work and need the big break. And it's considered this is a Netflix property, and a lot of people who are in film or highly respected actors, at least more high profile than these, are going to TV because of all the opportunities that are there. And certainly because it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then on the other hand, maybe everyone's like, look, we know you're running out of actors for the movies, so I'm going to hold my ground and hope I can get a movie role. I mean, that might be what's going on as well, as Marvel becomes more and more prolific. I mean, look how many movies are planned for Phase 3, right? So I guess all these other actors are going to, hold them instead of folding for the Netflix property. So I'm curious to what you think. Do these shows do these sound like shows you want to watch? And also, do you agree that these are going to be difficult to cross over with the cast from the feature films? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Let's get on to the second story, which I just love so much. It's more business intrigue, and at the center of it, once again, is Jeffrey Katzenberg, as we all know, is trying to get his company to go private. He couldn't get any financial institutions to purchase it. He was talking to a lot of people overseas, I believe in Japan, and I think even maybe China, to see if they might purchase the company so it could go back to being private because he's having such a difficult time with the stock market. And then when those deals weren't working out, or maybe he was, there's some confusion here, but maybe he was thinking of bringing in a third party, that would be Hasbro, to really flesh out their consumer division and make them more of a powerhouse in that regard. It looked like maybe Jeffrey Katzenberg might not only pull this off, but come out on top, right? Not so. Disney saw to that. And if Jeffrey Katzenberg, I'm sure he hated Disney before, but now I think he really hates them. Now it's verging on like an actual comic book enemy. That's how dastardly this is. But you have to be able to see where Disney's coming from. And hey, they won fair and square. You might not like the Empire, but the Empire is effective. So what did Disney do? Well, when Disney heard that Hasbro was considering merging with Dreamworks Animation, they apparently, quote-unquote, went nuclear in their inner ranks and sent them a letter. They sent a letter to Hasbro, which of course has not been revealed to the public, and neither Hasbro nor Disney would comment on this situation. But those that know and were willing to discuss it, anonymously, said that the letter pointed out to Hasbro that Disney is responsible for a third of their business, and that they give them such important toy lines as Marvel, Star Wars, and an upcoming deal that starts in 2017 with the Disney Princess line, of course, featuring Frozen. And Disney said that if Hasbro were to join forces with DreamWorks Animation, they would have no choice but to pull all those toys and all those brands from Hasbro because they would see Hasbro as a direct competitor. And Hasbro, not wanting to lose a third of their business, especially with all the Marvel movies on the horizon, Frozen being so powerful, and of course Star Wars just coming out next year, they dropped out of negotiations with Dreamworks Animation. And Dreamworks Animation is back in a real trouble spot. So who knows what's going to happen to Jeffrey Katzenberg and company, and we all can see that Disney is here to play. Even when they are on top and dominating in every area possible, they want to keep it that way, and they really took care of business. Now again, as I said, you can't fault Disney for that brilliant move. It's worthy of like Walter White or any of these great movie characters that just really lay it out there on the line and are very frank and honest about it. And it just really sucks for Dreamworks Animation, and I don't know what Jeffrey Katzenberg is going to do, and it would just be the height of irony and cruelty that Disney would be responsible for him having a problem in his career yet again. Because after all, don't forget, who's responsible for the Disney Renaissance, the first one? Not only Howard Ashman, but Jeffrey Katzenberg. Go watch that documentary, Waking Sleeping Beauty, if you have not done so, and you will see just how pivotal he was to that, to just completely saving Disney Animation. And this is the thanks he get. But he left the company. They wouldn't promote him, and he left, and that's a haunting that's never going to go away, apparently. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story of the day is about Paul Greengrass. Now, of course, Paul Greengrass found himself in a very nice place after Captain Phillips. Got a lot of award nominations, the film was very highly regarded, and suddenly he had his pick of projects. He had a little bit of a problem there because he left the Bourne franchise, and they were like, who leaves Bourne? And then the Green Zone movie just wasn't as successful as he'd hoped, and he was just, not quite at the height of his career like he would like to be. But then Captain Phillips really turned things around for him. And he's been dabbling with a lot of other properties, but he hasn't really picked what he was going to do. There's talk of him doing another Bourne movie, with Matt Damon returning. That's got a lot of buzz. But he's just now officially signed on for another project, and we'll see which one comes first. But I'm curious to what you think about this, and if perhaps it's too late for a movie based on the famous novel 1984. Now, of course, it's 2014. We've passed 1984. And while some of the things you could argue have come true, some of them have not. But anyway, this will actually see Paul Greengrass reteaming with his Captain Phillips producer, Scott Rudin, very powerful producer in Hollywood. Not quite in the news as much as he used to be a few years ago, but he used to be Harvey Weinstein's chief competition for award season. And, he still is to some degree, but he's just not as high profile as Harvey Weinstein. He doesn't get out there and make a name for himself, and as a result, he's, forever in second place with Harvey Weinstein. That shouldn't necessarily be the case. He needs to get out there and fight for his title. But anyway, he's going to be working on this 1984 movie with Paul Greengrass. Now, the original novel came out in 1949 and imagined a dystopian future. And as I've said, some people feel that some of the things that George Orwell predicted actually became true. Big Brother, Big Brother is watching you. That was from that book. And then also the synopsis, you can see why Hollywood would like it. It's about a couple, it focuses on a guy and the woman he falls in love with, and they decide to rebel against the powers that be, and they have to go on the run, etc. Your typical dystopian movie at this point. 1984 came out obviously a long time ago, 1949, and it might be a little bit like John Carter of Mars. Sure, it inspired all these other projects, but now since all those other projects already exist, it seems a little too bare bones. It's a similar problem also we were talking about with Cinderella yesterday with the Cinderella trailer. Can you have a simplistic Cinderella story when so many other people have expanded on that idea already? Can you go back to the roots? So they're going to try and do this with 1984, but I would say they should do 2084, because I really question whether or not people today are going to want to see a movie about an imagined, year, which was, 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago at this point. They'll be like, that seems ridiculous, and we know what came true, we know what didn't. I think you should take the spirit of 1984 and apply it to 2084. And I think that could be really interesting. And Paul Greengrass would love that because he's a very socially conscious director. Made United 93, made Green Zone, made Captain Phillips. These are all films that have some political aspects to them, of course. So I think that would be a great idea, and I think that's what I would really push for if I was involved in that project. But I'm just curious, would you see 1984 as a straight adaptation of the novel? All right, let's get on to the viewer question of the day. This is from Josh Jensen, and Josh Jensen says, question. Hi, Grace. I have a question. I've always wondered why movies take so long to shoot. For The Hunger Games Mockingjay, both movies, they shot them back to back, it took 10 months to complete, not including post-production. How does it take 10 whole months to film about a 4-hour combined running time? Always love watching your show whenever I have time. Whenever you have time, Josh Jensen. Just kidding. I'm always happy whenever you can tune in, and I appreciate it. All right, so then he put a smiley face as well, and I love smiley faces. All right, Josh, excellent question. Why does it take so long to shoot a movie? Well, a usual movie can take about 3 months to shoot. Sometimes they really rush it because they have a low budget. But, you know, when you have everything that you want and you have all the money that you can get from the studio and you can do it professionally in a professional amount of time, you usually take about 3 months. Now, obviously, Mockingjay took 10 months. That's not 6 months, which would be double, right? So where did the extra 4 months come from? Well, the reasoning is that there are a couple of things. First of all, with a film as big as Mockingjay, as you might recall from my interview with Mahershala Ali, he said they actually had to travel the globe to film in different locations. And you know, you might question whether or not that's necessary, but having seen Mockingjay Part 1, I can tell you the results are quite impressive. So whatever it took to get that result, and we know they're going to make their money back, I think it was worth it. So they really made the effort to go around there and shoot in all these different locales. And big budget films do that. They get some tax breaks occasionally as well. And also I think it helps the movie to, you know, for foreign countries to be like, hey, you shot that here. Oh, I remember the press that we got when you were shooting the movie here. And now I'm interested in the movie. So that plays into it as well. So you have the 10 months for all the travel time. Then also I have to say, it takes a very, very, very long time to set up all shots. You would be surprised at how much downtime there is on a set. That's why actors can, you know, work on other projects, take meetings. You hear about them having these really elaborate trailers because they have so much downtime. They need to keep themselves occupied. And then also you hear about them getting into sometimes shenanigans on set, and, you know, getting themselves into sticky situations because, again, there's just a lot of time to kill. And why does it take so long? Well, lighting a scene and coming up with all the different problems, hiding all the tech, where are we going to have the sound equipment? You know, we have to place the green screen. You know, if it's a special effects shot, we have to, you know, everybody has to go back to one. We have to reset all the different special effects, like if there are explosions. This takes a really long time. And I think the rule is you get off maybe 3 or 4 pages a day of a script when you're shooting. So keep that in mind. Then also you have to have, you know, your union, obviously with a big production like this especially, so people have to only work a certain amount of hours during the day. Then they have to have breaks. You have to give people time off. Then also people have other projects they're working on. I mean, they are largely, you know, committed to this, but maybe they have a commitment to promote a film that's coming out while they're shooting. They have to go and take a break, and the studio often will pay for them to fly, or the other studio, well, whoever's involved, but they have to take a break from the set, so you have a break there. So you have to, not only that, but you have to adjust around people's schedules, and often an actor who has a small amount of scenes will just come in and shoot all their stuff back to back, even if it takes place throughout the 2 movies. So you have to do all the schedule coordinating, you have to do all the, all the technical stuff comes into effect. So it just takes a really long time to set up a project. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are aspiring filmmakers and you have your own guerrilla film projects, and that's very exciting and wonderful, but you can be much more productive because you don't have union rules that you have to follow. You don't have to feed everybody and take breaks for that. You don't have to wait for people to go through hair and makeup. You don't have to go back to one when you have to reset a take. Also when there are tracking shots, you have to make sure you get those just perfectly. And also, how about the performance? There are some really interesting and touching performances in Mockingjay that takes a number of takes. You might hear people, and especially not you shoot digitally, you've heard people like David Fincher just run that camera forever. Just do, like, literally, like maybe 60, 70 takes of a scene to make sure they get the one they really want. Because you don't have to worry about burning film anymore. You can just delete the ones that you don't want and move on. Although you're not really ironically moving on because you're shooting 70 to 80 takes. So that's why it takes so long, Josh. That's the answer to your question. I hope that was illuminating to you. Thank you for asking. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question. I hope you will. And also let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have. And don't forget, your Marvel Phase 3 video, your thoughts on the upcoming Marvel Phase 3, keep it to around 30 seconds. Send me the unlisted YouTube link to grace@gracerandolph.com. Those are due end of day tomorrow. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. You can check those other episodes right now.